So Trump recently said that he wants Canada, Greenland, and the Panama Canal to join the United States.
US President Donald Trump's abrupt cancellation of a state visit in 2 weeks' time. It came after Mr. Trump floated the prospect of the US buying the autonomous Danish territory of Greenland.
Only 20% of Greenland is habitable. 56,000 people live on the frigid island nation. So why would President-elect Donald Trump possibly use military force to overtake the country?
While Washington made noise, Ottawa made deals. Canada just secured a $3 billion agreement to develop rare earth and gold mines in Greenland without firing a shot, without a headline war. These weren't military bases, they were contracts, and they didn't go to the United States. Despite years of bold talk, from threatening tariffs to floating the idea of buying Greenland, the U.S. was left with scraps, a minor $120 million pledge for a single project. Meanwhile, Greenland and Denmark turned toward the quieter player, not the one shouting, the one signing. The result: America's Arctic dreams are now being written in Canadian ink. No invasions, no speeches, just results. Because in today's power game, the real victories don't come from flags or firepower. They come from who controls the minerals, the routes, and the future. And right now, that's not America. It's Canada. While Washington chased headlines, Canada rewrote the script. Instead of flashy subsidies or aggressive diplomacy, Ottawa quietly formed a coalition. Canada, the EU, and Nordic investment funds pooled together a $3.1 billion green infrastructure and mining network across Greenland. It wasn't just capital, it was coordination. A long-term strategy, not a short-term stunt. Greenland responded with a 30-year mining license, local job guarantees, and a bold revenue-sharing clause. 10% of all project profits will go into a sovereign future fund for Greenland's development. Not just extraction transformation. What did the U.S. bring to the table? One deal, a small-scale investment in the Tanbreez project through the EXIM-backed. Respectable, but not competitive. It's the difference between leading a coalition and backing a side bet. Canada didn't win because it offered more money. It won because it offered trust, partnership, and a seat at the table. And that's how you beat a superpower, not with force, but with foresight. Greenland is no longer just a frozen frontier. It's becoming a critical node in the global industrial map. At the heart of this transformation is Tanbreez, one of the world's most promising rare earth deposits. If fully developed, it could deliver up to 85,000 tons of rare earth elements per year. Metals essential for everything from EV batteries and wind turbines to advanced radar systems and precision-guided weapons. In a world racing to secure critical minerals, that's not just valuable, it's strategic leverage. But the opportunity goes beyond one mine. Greenland's molybdenum reserves, another vital metal used in steel alloys and electronics, are projected to cover nearly 25% of the European Union's demand once fully operational. For a continent trying to break free from dependency on China and Russia, this is a geopolitical breakthrough. And what seals the deal? Infrastructure. Greenland isn't doing this alone. With backing from Canada, the EU, and Norway, it's building roads, ports, and clean energy facilities designed to support long-term mining, not just short-term profits. This is multilateral investment at work, stable, sustainable, and future-focused. What once looked like barren ice is now a strategic chessboard. And Greenland. It's finally making its first real moves. Just when the Arctic seemed to be shifting quietly toward cooperation, Donald Trump re-entered the picture with volume. This time, it wasn't just rhetoric about buying Greenland. It was a full-blown revival of the old idea cloaked in new, sharper tones. Trump publicly floated using U.S. military leverage to secure America's interests in Greenland, hinting that strategic bases and mineral access weren't optional but necessary. The language was unmistakably aggressive, not investment intervention. His running mate, Vice President J.D. Vance, followed up with a high-profile visit to Pituffik Space Base, the U.S.'s northernmost military outpost. From there, he delivered a pointed message to Copenhagen: if Denmark couldn't guarantee Greenland's stability, then Washington might have to step in. The message landed with a thud. Greenland's government, backed by Denmark, gave no dramatic press conference, no fiery rebuttal, just a single cool response. We don't make decisions under pressure, no confrontation. Just defiance wrapped in calm. Trump may have expected headlines. What he got was silence and the quiet resistance of a region that has found new partners, new funding, and a new identity. One that doesn't involve being told what to do even by a superpower. While Washington issued bold declarations and floated threats of military posturing, Ottawa and Brussels were quietly orchestrating something far more lasting and far more sophisticated. What unfolded wasn't just a shift in contracts, it was a shift in strategy away from dominance and toward diplomacy. Canada didn't just sign a mining deal with Greenland. Alongside the European Union and a network of Nordic investment banks, it co-founded the Greenland Green Transition Fund, a $3.1 billion package designed not merely to tap into Greenland's rare earth reserves, but to foster a full-scale transformation of its economy. This wasn't a smash and grab for critical minerals. It was an investment in clean energy, local infrastructure, and sovereign resilience, a blueprint for sustainable independence, not dependency. And the offer came with clear, tangible benefits: a 30-year development license with built-in community protections, guaranteed local employment quotas, and a 10% profit-sharing scheme directed into Greenland's National Future Fund, giving the island a long-term stake in its own resources, not just a short-term payday. For Greenlanders long treated as a peripheral concern in great power competition, the difference was night and day. Where the U.S. offered control, Canada and the EU offered collaboration. Where Trump-era rhetoric framed Greenland as a prize to be claimed, this new alliance treated it as a partner to be empowered. But the implications go beyond economics. In parallel, NATO powers like France and Norway began expanding their Arctic presence not to confront Greenland, but to anchor a new multilateral security structure in the north. Their message was strategic and subtle. The Arctic is no longer a vacuum for unilateral ambition. It's becoming a stage for shared governance, green trade routes, and defense cooperation with Greenland as both a beneficiary and a gatekeeper. For the U.S., it's a wake-up call. Because in today's geopolitics, power doesn't just come from hard assets or hard threats. It comes from being trusted. And while America still holds unmatched military might, that's no longer enough to win allies or secure influence in a place like Greenland. The contrast couldn't be clearer. Washington tried to dominate. Ottawa and Brussels chose to invest. And in a world that increasingly values stability, sustainability, and sovereignty, Greenland made its choice not with a megaphone, but with a signature. For decades, Greenland has been viewed by world powers not as a nation, but as a strategic asset, a vast icy chessboard rich in minerals, rare earths, and Arctic access. But for the people who live there, Greenland isn't a pawn in anyone's geopolitical game. It's their land, their legacy, and their future. And when Donald Trump openly suggested that the U.S. could simply buy Greenland, the backlash was immediate and deeply human. This wasn't just a diplomatic misstep. It was a cultural insult. Greenland's prime minister responded bluntly, "Greenland belongs to the Greenlandic people." It wasn't just a headline, it was a line in the ice, a signal to the world that this is not a territory to be auctioned off or traded in the name of strategy. It's a homeland with a growing sense of identity, autonomy, and political maturity. And that sentiment was shared widely. At home, over 85% of Greenlanders rejected any idea of a U.S. takeover, according to public polls. For them, this wasn't about rejecting economic opportunity. It was about rejecting a mindset that sees small nations as mere extensions of great power ambition. They watched as Washington debated their future on cable news and diplomatic circuits, often without a single Greenlandic voice in the room. And they made it clear that era is over. Today's Greenland isn't a colony. It's not a token to be handed from empire to empire. It's a rising Arctic democracy that demands and is beginning to command respect on its own terms. So when Trump's allies visited military bases like Pituffik or floated ideas about Greenland's strategic value, they were met not with hostility but with quiet resolve. The people of Greenland don't need a fight. They just need one thing to be heard. Because in 2025, legitimacy doesn't come from firepower or funding. It comes from listening and asking before assuming. And in Nuuk, the message couldn't be clearer. You can't buy what isn't for sale. And if you don't come with respect, don't expect a partnership. While Trump talked of taking Greenland by any means necessary, Canada did something far more effective. It showed up with contracts, capital, and cooperation. Quietly, without media theatrics or political threats, Ottawa positioned itself as the adult in the room. Through a $3.1 billion coalition with the EU Nordic investment banks and multilateral green infrastructure funds, Canada transformed Greenland from a territorial target into a strategic partner. This wasn't just a mining deal, it was a diplomatic blueprint. While Washington scrambled to fund a single project through EXIM, Canada launched an entire Greenland Green Transition Fund. While U.S. rhetoric fixated on military bases and territorial control, Canada and its allies built ports, signed 30-year licenses, and pledged revenue-sharing agreements with local communities. One side came with threats, the other came with trust. And the result, Canada is now seen as the anchor of stability in a region long dominated by military maps. France, Norway, and even Denmark are aligning more closely with Ottawa's approach green development, indigenous partnerships, and long-term security through soft power. This isn't just about rare earths or molybdenum. It's about the future of Arctic governance and who gets to write the rules. The United States, once the loudest voice in every room, is now watching from the sidelines as its allies chart a different path. Meanwhile, Greenland is no longer a pawn in great power chess. It's becoming a platform for infrastructure diplomacy and green technology exports. And Canada? It's no longer just a neighbor to the north. It's becoming the broker of balance between the Arctic Europe and global supply chains. In the vacuum left by American unpredictability, Canada isn't just stepping in, it's stepping up. Everyone wanted Greenland. China eyed it for critical minerals. Russia mapped it for military advantage. The US demanded it with swagger and speeches. But it was Canada, quiet, methodical, and backed by multilateral partners, that walked away with the influence, the contracts, and the trust. This wasn't a takeover, it was a transformation. By embedding Greenland into a broader green transition strategy, Canada didn't just win access to critical resources, it gained something far more enduring: the narrative. The world now sees Ottawa, not Washington, as the responsible Arctic partner, the one capable of long-term vision instead of short-term control. And now the real question lingers like frost in the polar air. Does America still have what it takes to compete in the coldest power game on Earth? Because in the Arctic, might doesn't win anymore. Credibility does. What do you think? Has the U.S. lost its Arctic edge, or is there still time to reclaim it? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the global power shifts shaping our future.